Okay, there we go. Hello, everyone. Sensei Sylvain, Shifu Sylvain, whichever you prefer, with you here to continue with our investigation of chapter 17 of the 28 chapter Lotus Sutra. And as you can tell from the last video, I shaved just for you. All right, so let's do Daimoku Sancho before we start. Open our Buddha Mind channel. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. We left off talking about such people wear the Tathagata like a crown. And I said that this is a statement regarding practice, and it really says that practice is awakening itself. We wear Tathagata like a crown. Again, it's on our head, it's in our mind. This whole sutra is about our mind experience, right? So if you practice, as he says, those who read, write, receive, and embrace, and people who help others to do the same, such people wear the Tathagata like a crown. In other words, it becomes who you are in the Buddha mind experience. So practice is Buddha. This very moment in this life is Buddha. All you need to do is clear away all the monkey mind delusions in your way, and you'll discover there it is, there it has always been, there will it ever be. Not because it's something that you must have, because you already have it. The point is that if you can commune with that state, then all the delusions cease to influence, degrade, get in your way, create misunderstandings, exhort you to create negative energy, karma, and you become free of those influences, unperturbed, undisturbed by them, undistracted. You're free to observe them as just things that go on, and they don't affect you anymore. This is called liberation. Liberation from what? From suffering, because all of those delusions create suffering. So if you can just set them aside, let the monkeys scream in another room, and just watch them with curiosity and compassion, because you really want them to cease for everyone, then you're in the Buddha mind and you're no longer suffering. You might hear that concern for others as suffering, but it's compassion. It's a desire for just joy to spread, not like whack-a-mole. You're not in the Buddha mind. Whack! Some people think that's what shakabuku is. Shakabuku is a very, very diligent effort to break through people's perceived obstacles so that they can begin to understand what's going on in their mind, free of the delusions that some are so attached to. I mean, think about the attachment to delusion that somebody has to experience in order to strap a bomb around themselves and go in the middle of a crowd and explode. Wow. If you could put that kind of determination into your Buddhist practice, how quickly which you enter your Buddha mind. So this is what I mean by compassion. This is what Shakyamuni meant by compassion. To just hear of that kind of activity, and that's an extreme example, but there are examples like that all over the world. It makes you very sad. So shakabuku isn't an angry motivated thing. It's a sadness, compassion, embracing sort of thing. I know that doesn't resonate very true with what in the West we normally think of as compassion. We equate it with empathy, and not that that's entirely wrong, but empathy in a way of wanting to, you've heard the statement tough love, and that's real compassion. Well, I probably should stay off of that because there's a lot of triggers in all this discussion. Um, Sometimes you do have to get tough with people for them, but it depends on your relationship. So it say enough to say that we humans are very complicated, and this is why Buddhism, as much as you study and as much as you achieve your own revelations from study, um, one of the one of the reasons why it's only one of three aspects of practice is because study alone doesn't break through your own the barriers that are so deeply within your samsaric consciousness that you're not even aware of them. It's always easier to see somebody else's patterns and flaws and characteristics and so forth than it is for those people that they'll see some of them, especially as they get older, they'll catch themselves. That's just life experience. Um, but until you tell your friend, you have a habit of doing this, how many times will they come back and look at you and go, really? What do you mean? Because they just don't see it. Well, we're all that way, and this is the benefit of the Sangha, of practicing with others. Doesn't mean you have to practice with 3,000 people. It doesn't have to be a concert. I just talked and answered a question on Quora about this. There's a great elation in gathering with others when you're of a similar mind, like going to a concert. Um, and there's a kind of a high from that. It's very energizing when there's that much focused energy in the room. But don't mistake that with awakening or enlightenment. Although it can be a tremendous tool, okay, but you have to consider the context. Context is everything here. If your context is, I'm with 50,000 people watching a football game and I feel, amazing, that's more the world of rapture than it is the world of Buddha or even Bodhisattva. Because certainly while you're yelling for your team, you're not looking compassionately at the other 49,999 people in the stadium as though you want them to experience this excitement. You all are. And this excitement is very attachment based. You see? So don't confuse the two. Rapture's rapture, but it's not. It's one of the 6 lower paths, the lower worlds, right? It's not even learning and realization, let alone Bodhisattva and Buddhahood. So if the context were focused, the mind of meditation on experiencing and communing with the Buddha we all are, and I almost said part of, and that falls into New Ageism there. We're not part of Buddha. We are Buddha. Buddha is a a static reality that transcends time. And it is the source of our samsaric being, individually and collectively. There is no individual and collectivity. That's a duality. That's a samsaric perception. So get a handful of people, get one other person to focus, sit with you in front of Gohonzon and get a rhythm of chanting going together. And at some point, your perception of being with another person will break down just as much as your breakdown of you chanting. It'll happen subconsciously. You won't really be aware of it unless you look for it. And I don't want to give you something to distract you from your focus in your Buddha state. But the more you do it, the more you'll experience this thing. You'll observe it. And that'll be your Buddha mind awakening more. Because once your Buddha mind awakens enough that you can actually start to observe what's going around in your life while you're in that state, you're deepening your Buddha way in your Bodhisattva practice. And there will come a time when, even when you stop chanting and you move away from Gohonzon, that state will stay with you. How long it stays with you before the monkeys take over, that varies with everyone. But the goal is to stay in that state. Okay? So, let's get back to the book. Ajita, such good sons or good daughters do not need to put up stupas, temples, or monasteries for me, or make the 4 types of offerings to the monks. Why? Because such good sons and daughters, by receiving and embracing, reading, and reciting this sutra, have already put up stupas, built monasteries, and made offerings to the monks. That is, they have already put up stupas of the 7 precious materials for the Buddha's remains, tall stupas, wide at the base, tapering up to the Brahma heaven, hung with flags and canopies, jeweled bells, and flowing flowers, incense for burning, garlic. And I already talked about this. This is what we represent in our altar. There's the tower with the 7 precious jewels, materials. It changes depending on which sutra you're reading. There's the Buddha at the Holy Eagle Peak or Vulture Peak, whatever, with Tahoe Buddha, abundant treasures, and surrounded by monks and bodhisattvas, and so all the characters of the Lotus Sutra are on the Gohonzon. And we protect it or exalt it in a butsudan, a container. Okay, and that container is up on the wall higher than our eye level so that our throat remains open and we can breathe. And all of this is to help us get into that Buddha mindset, that trance-like experience of chanting, shutting down the monkeys, focusing on our Buddha nature, which is encapsulated in this representation. Don't make the mistake that we worship Gohonzon. We do not worship Gohonzon. Nichiren said it very clearly. Don't seek this Gohonzon outside yourself. This is just, because we're in samsara and we're human, this is just a convenient mirror, a representation, conceptually, which we can only deepen our understanding of with study. See how the two are intertwined? So that we can awaken our innate Buddha mind. That's not Buddha, it's a representation. That's why we read and write and have language, because we're trying to communicate inner concepts to others. So this is part of that samsaric device. It's a skillful means. And we use it to shut down the samsaric mind and commune directly with our Buddha mind. So that's something I just talked about, words like faith and prayer, these Western terms that penetrate these translations, and they're not appropriate. One of the others that I forgot to mention is worship. This idea of worship it has hidden meanings of dedication to other, and that's totally not Buddhism. There is no other in Buddhism. That's a fabrication. So please understand, this is a device. It's a very important device. It's a very evolved device. It's a device that, because of what it enables us to do in our mind, is deeply respect worthy, right? Just like this sutra. The reason it's so important, the reason it's so valued, is because of what it enables us to do with our own mind. Ultimately, that's the only value there is in life, right? Just like loving a partner. They enable us to experience deep, abiding love. Yes, there's a lot of complexity to that with attachments and desires and all of that. Again, don't confuse rapture with awakening. But what I said earlier about not knowing ourselves, a partner digs deeply within our karma, and if we can stick with it, notice relationships don't last long in these days, this era, this age. It's because we have little tolerance for being shown our negative karma, our obstacles. This is why it's so difficult to learn, teach, accept, embrace Buddhism, because it does the same thing. All right. Ajita, after my extinction, if anyone hears this sutra and is able to embrace it and copy it themselves, or lead others to copy it, then they have already built monasteries with 32 halls of red sandalwood and tall as 8 tala trees, lofty, spacious, and beautifully decorated, in which hundreds of thousands of monks live. They have gardens, groves, bathing pools, walking paths, and meditation cells, clothing, food, drink, bedding, medicine, and all kinds of things for comfort. Such monasteries and halls, hundreds of thousands of billions, countless numbers of them, have been given here in my presence as an offering to me and to the monks. Okay, hyperbole again, but he's making the point that this practice has greater value than all of that. Even if you could even begin to conceive of doing, okay, can you conceive of yourself building hundreds of thousands of billions of monasteries with all these halls containing all of these monks? Maybe in a fantastical way in your imagination you could, but not, you couldn't possibly do that in your lifetime, right? But what he's saying is, when you practice, when you embrace, read, recite, copy, and teach even one other person, it's equivalent to having done all that. Wow. He's trying to get you to understand how profound this practice is and how deeply valuable it is to in the words of Robin Williams in the Poet Society, to suck the marrow out of life. It weren't his words. He said it in the movie. He was quoting, I don't know if he was quoting from Leaves of Grass, Walt Whitman, or I don't know if he was quoting. But anyway, I'm sure you've heard the quote. If not, it's a good one. Okay. Therefore I say that after the extinction of the Tathagata, if anyone receives and embraces, reads and recites this sutra, teaches it for the sake of others, either copies it himself or causes others to copy it, and makes offerings to it, again the altar, they no longer need to put up stupas and temples or build monasteries and make offerings to the monks, because what they're doing is of immensely greater value. How much more true is this of those who are able to embrace this sutra and also practice generosity, morality, patience, perseverance, single-mindedness, and wisdom? There's the three. Perseverance, single-mindedness, and wisdom. Study, strong mind, determination. That's the practice. In addition to patience, morality, generosity, those other great things to accomplish. The practice consists of all of it: behavior and dedication, study, contemplation, determination, conviction. Right? Their virtue will be the greatest, immeasurable, and unlimited, just as space, which in the east, west, south, and north, the four intermediate directions, and up and down, is immeasurable and unlimited. So too the blessings of such people, the merits of such people, will be immeasurable and unlimited, and they will quickly reach all-inclusive wisdom, enlightenment, awakening. Now, do you see how I corrected that blessings word again? It's Western. It's wrong. Because when he says, so too the blessings of such people, infers that they've received something from outside themselves. It's wrong. To use the word merits, still a word, not complete, but much more internal, much more indicative of internal development, isn't it? You can confuse merit with reward, but merit is self-initiated. Blessings are put upon you. And that's not Buddhism. So I have an issue again with Western contemporary translations that try to make this readable for the Western mind and unfortunately inculcate their own Western garbage, baggage. All right. Blessings. It's not Buddhism. If anyone reads and recite, how many times is he going to say this? And I'm pointing that out because too many times I've read comments about the Lotus Sutra from people who pose as scholars who say, the Lotus Sutra, it's just a colorful story, congratulating itself. It doesn't really have any kind of directions for practice. It doesn't have, what's the word they use? Has no, anyway, that it doesn't say anything about rules of practice or rules is not the word, but, directives. Gosh, I can't find the word. But anyway, I think you know what I mean. They complain that the Lotus Sutra isn't like a manual, a guidebook, a manual of how to. Well, I beg to differ because every third sentence is telling you read, write, receive, embrace, teaches it for the sake of others, copies it himself or causes others to copy it. They have already put up stupas or built monasteries, served and praised the community of Shravakas, and also in hundreds of thousands of billions of ways praised the merits of the Bodhisattva. Why do they use the word merits there? They got it there. Why throw blessings around? They got it. Merits of the Bodhisattva. Why does the Bodhisattva have merits? Not because they were handed to him or her, because it's something they achieved, they developed, right? That's us. We're the Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas of the earth, right? Sitting on my robe. Okay. If for the sake of others with various causes and conditions, they explain this Dharma Flower Sutra, Myoho Renge Kyo. Every time you read wonderful Dharma Flower Sutra, wonderful Flower Sutra, Dharma Flower Sutra, in whatever form you read it in any translation, understand that that is, in Nichiren Buddhism, Myoho Renge Kyo. It's a translation in Japanese of what that in English is a translation of Saddharma Pundarika Sutra, the Indian. There's a different translation in Korean, in Chinese, in Mongol, in Swedish, right? In French. Although the French may, all over the world, if you're practicing Nichiren Daishonin, or sorry, Nichiren Shonin's Buddhism, then you are chanting Myoho Renge Kyo, because that's Nichiren was Japanese. Nichiren studied Chinese. He studied Chinese sutras. He studied all over Asia. But he is Japanese, and his insight is Japanese, and his interpretation of the title is Japanese. You could chant the Threefold Lotus Sutra, but I would say that our regional minds, samsaric minds, would be too distracted by the English meaning behind those words rather than letting them flow as the entire teaching. So it's a great benefit to us that we have this Myoho Renge Kyo translation of these very involved and multiple meaning characters, that we don't have that kind of conceptualism in English words. English is a huge language of immense subtleties that are easy to miss, and it's a finite. The words in English are very finite. The further back you go into Latin, for instance, that'd be a curious thing to know, is what would be a Latin translation of Saddharma Pundarika Sutra. Because basically what I'm saying is that characters Myoho Renge Kyo carry with them a tremendous amount of this. This is Myoho Renge Kyo, right? When we're chanting, reciting, copying, even if we pick just one phrase, Myoho Renge Kyo, we are picking a representation, like the Gohonzon, of the entirety of Buddhist scholarship teaching. It's difficult to carry that kind of meaning, that largesse of understanding in English words. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's important that, lest we forget what we're talking about here as we read these English translations, that when we come up against these English words, we need to remind ourselves that this sentence reads, if for the sake of others with various causes and conditions they explain this Myoho Renge Kyo in accord with its meaning, then it makes much more sense, doesn't it? Because when we in the West read Dharma Flower Sutra in according with its meaning, we're thinking the words in this book. And once again, I'm going to remind you, in the Lankavatara Sutra, and in many places, but that sutra specifically, Shakyamuni nails this monk down to stop being attached to the words and seek out the meaning. Remember, if your teacher is pointing out the moon to you, and you focus on the finger, you will miss all of that glory of the moon. It comes from the Lankavatara Sutra. And my battery's running down. So, let's Plug us in. That was a nice little distraction. Okay. So I think I made my point. That's why if you're reading along with me, you'll see me jump to different words in the middle of things because I want you to get the meaning. The words are beautiful and wonderful on their own, but their meaning is everything. Boo, 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 boo. If they are already able to observe the precepts in purity and able to live with those who are gentle, patient, without anger, and firm in will and thought, if always valuing sitting meditation, they have attained profound concentration, have patiently and zealously understood good teachings, and are clever and wise in responding to difficult questions, Ajita, if after my extinction there are good sons and daughters who receive and embrace, read and recite this sutra, who have such excellent merits as these, you should know that they have already proceeded to the place of the way, sat under the tree of awakening, and are nearing supreme awakening. Ajita, wherever those good sons or good daughters sit or stand or walk, in that place a stupa should be erected, and all human and heavenly beings should make offerings to it as though it were a stupa of the Buddha. The world-honored one, wanting to say what he meant, once again spoke in verse. That whole paragraph is the Bodhisattva way. How is the Lotus Sutra not an instruction on how to practice in daily life? What is the goal and the method of practicing Buddhism correctly? How is it not? I don't understand people who don't get that. If people after my extinction are able to honor and embrace this sutra, their merits will be immeasurable, as explained above. It is as though they had made all kinds of offerings, and for the Buddha's remains had put up stupas adorned with 7 precious materials, stupas tall and wide, tapering up to the Brahma heaven, with banners and tens of millions of billions of jeweled bells, stirred by the wind to make wonderful music. For innumerable eons they make offerings to these stupas with flowers, incense, and various kinds of garlands, with robes from heaven, and a variety of musical instruments, and by burning perfumed oil and clarified butter lamps, which constantly illuminate the whole area. In the evil age of the decline of the Dharma, that's our age, one who can embrace this sutra will have done the equivalent of making all the offerings described above. If people can embrace this sutra, it will be as if in the presence of the Buddha. They had built monasteries of ox head sandalwood as offerings to him, monasteries of the 32 halls, 8 tala trees high, complete with superior food, fine robes and bedding, with quarters for hundreds of thousands, with gardens, groves, and bathing pools, with walking paths and meditation cells, all variously and beautifully adorned. If anyone with strong mind and understanding, wisdom of the meanings, receives, embraces, reads, recites, and copies this sutra, have you heard that before? Or even causes others to copy it, and makes offerings to the sutra, scattering flowers, incense, and powdered incense, and constantly burning perfume oil made from sumana, gardenia, or atimuktaka flowers, anyone who makes such offerings will obtain innumerable merits. Just as space is unlimited, think dark matter, dark energy especially, space. We recently discovered in science that it has mass. Huh? So too are that person's merits. Limitless. How much more so annoying, how much more so anyone who embraces this sutra and at the same time is generous, moral, and patient. Generous, moral, and patience, attributes of compassion. Who enjoys meditation, does not get angry or speak ill of others, is reverent toward stupas and mausoleums, and humble toward monks. Who is never even close to getting arrogant, always pondering about wisdom, and does not get angry when asked difficult questions, explaining to questioners appropriately. If anyone is able to do all this, that person's merits will be immeasurable. If anyone meets such a Dharma teacher, one who has attained such virtues, they should scatter flowers from heaven over him, cover him with robes from heaven, and greet him by prostrating themselves at his feet, as though they were thinking of the Buddha. What's more, they should think, soon he will be going to the place of the way, to become faultless and unconditioned. Right? Samsara is a state of conditioned mind. To commune with our Buddha mind, we become unconditioned. But we're still here in the samsaric realm. We're just unconditioned by it. Follow? Greatly enriching human and heavenly beings. Wherever such a teacher lives or stays, walks, sits, or lies down, or teaches even a verse, there a stupa should be erected. It should be wonderfully and beautifully adorned, and offerings of many kinds should be made to it. When children of the Buddha live in such a place, it means that the Buddha accepts them and always lives among them, whether walking, sitting, or lying down. And I wrote a note to myself here. Our world changes as our wisdom manifests. The world reflects our mental state. I wrote that as a closing comment, that when we practice Buddhism correctly, when we practice, and Jim, next chapter is 18, blessings of responding with joy, merits of responding with joy. We talked a little about that. Rodrigo, if you're watching, it's going to answer a lot of questions when we get to it. But just to finish chapter 17, because that's what we're talking about. Our worldview, the way we understand the world, the way we think the world works, is an illusion. It's an illusion created by our conditioned samsaric mind. The way we understand things is the way that we understand things because of the way we built our understanding of things. If you study, I used to really be into this decades ago, epistemology. It's a study of how what we call knowledge is created. And it gets down to, it gets down to chemistry and biology, but, one of the paths into understanding epistemology is the idea of the influences and traumas that we may have experienced in our childhood it's said that abstraction doesn't really start to develop in our minds till around age 9. So there are a lot of things that happen to us pre-age 9, certainly pre-puberty, before that are processed by our samsaric minds as indelible truths, you see. Whereas once we develop abstraction, the truths certainly are truths, but they're mutable, they're more transferable, they're more modifiable with new experience. But those new experiences are going to be tainted by indelible ways of thinking that we've already inculcated. Now, as Buddhists, we know that we carry that kind of inculcated thinking pre-birth, because we understand that birth is not just a combination of sperm and egg, or the DNA of the sperm and the DNA of the egg, but the penetration of that embryo with its own DNA information, if you will. If you think of DNA as a physical carrier of karmic energies, karmic Ichen and Sanzen. So there's really three parties to a birth. And that new DNA molecule that is created in the embryo combines its own information with the male and female into a new strand. It's heavily influenced by that environment that it's in. So that environment becomes the environment of the world we perceive. So in a very real way, if there's 7 billion people on the planet, there are 7 billion versions of this planet, this world, these cultures, this universe, everything. So in a very huge way, when we attain our Buddha mind awakening, all of those worlds are cleared away, and a universal truth of all phenomena and clarity of worldview replaces whatever we've brought in our conditioned state understanding of the world. And we can see this without even attaining the Buddha mind, because simply growing up, we can look back at our perception as children, our perception as teenagers, our perception as 20-something, our perceptions as 30-somethings, especially if you travel. Traveling is a great education, because what you experience are phenomenally different ways of understanding the same things. It really develops the mind. But if you can't travel, you'll reach different stages in your life and you'll look back and go, I can't believe I used to think that way. We all do it. So why would awakening the Buddha mind be any different? So that was just a point of clarity, a little statement I made at the end of chapter 17. Remember that, this hyperbole and everything that we read and everything, I understand that it's very concrete stuff. It's not just, mystical, dreamy thinking or glorification of itself. See where I'm going again? It's very tangible stuff. Buddhism is about tangible experience, personal experience, real knowledge, supplanting delusion. Okay, chapter 17. There's a lot of meat in that one. And 18 is promising to do the same. So, the Lotus Sutra, it just gets more and more profound the more you read it. And from beginning to end, it progresses by setting up the parameters to understand, and then it starts nailing it down. Not only is this how you understand, but this is how you live your life in order to understand. I can't think of a more complete manual about how to practice Buddhism than the Lotus Sutra. And with that, think we've all got enough to chew on for a little bit. Let's do Daimoku Sancho. Make sure that we're still aligned. And please, 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 I invite you to comment, ask questions. Here we go. Myoho Renge Kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much. I just had a funny thought for all my Star Trek friends out there. Live long and prosper. All right. That's actually from Hebrew. But anyway, that's a different story. Please enjoy your day. Enjoy the people around you. Love yourself. Make time for yourself. Thanks again. See you soon. Chapter 18 next. And bye-bye.